We're going to get started on the makeover of this country hutch. This piece was a custom order for a client who lives in Nevada who has a Spanish style home. And so I hope that you enjoy the kind of artistic Spanish boho design that this piece turns out to be. This hutch had been previously painted. I had purchased it from a local couple who lives in a farm here in the Ozarks, and the lady's daughter-in-law had painted it for her several years ago, so the paint finish had kind of worn down some. So for prep work, I deep cleaned it, I scuff sanded it all over, and then on the tabletop I used my orbital sander just to really have a nice smooth finish on the tabletop. And so we're going to go through on this hutch and buffet several painting phases, and I'll kind of explain them. But one of the things I think that is neat about this particular tutorial is you'll be able to see a few different points where we could stop at a certain point and not keep going, and you may like it just as it is. So you're kind of going to get to see several different types of makeover styles on this one hutch for this one tutorial. I'm using Krylon chalky finish paint, and I just chose like a very summer kind of a mossy green for this, and this is going to be my base coat that I'm putting on over this really kind of faded antique white. I don't want like complete coverage, so I'm putting on this green, and I want to leave some areas of the white showing through because I'm going to come back over that with different colors. And as you can see now, like the yellow is a great contrast. This is sort of a school bus yellow, and it's just, these are all going to be layers that will peek through. When you're working in layers, I think one of the most important things to keep in mind is to work with thin coats of paint, because you don't want your paint to be so thick that it begins to build up in a really unattractive way where you have really heavy brush strokes. In hand painting furniture, and I think almost especially too in using chalk paint, while a lot of chalk paints are self-leveling to an extent, and I've seen this in latex paint and oil-based and enamel paints as well, is that brush strokes are common, but when you use thicker layers of paint, this makes your brush strokes all the more apparent. And then that's where I would say even it gets your bulkiness that you will see that is kind of unintended in your layers of paint and your brush strokes. So here's what I suggest, working in layers, or even just working, I think this is especially true when you're working in layers like this, because as you guys will see, I will have many layers on this particular hutch. And so working in layers, or even just having a smooth finish, when you dip your brush in, don't get a ton of paint on it, and then offload a good amount of what's on the brush. And so that way you'll be working with a thinner coat. And it's also if you want a more of a pristine finish, spraying a little bit of water on your paintbrush can also help. Once you have your base coat on, that can help. So I do want a little bit of buildup, and I definitely am going for some brush strokes, but there's a difference between having it in a way that is an intentional and an artistic than where it is just a messy buildup that is kind of undesirable. I want to take a moment to talk about painting with all of the drawers in, as well as painting over the hardware. I'd had somebody recently had said to me in a very nice way, a lady had said, wow, this is the first time I'd ever seen anybody paint hardware, when she watched a different tutorial that I did. And so if I am painting a piece that is like a vintage French country or European farmhouse, or like a messy, like a boho Spanish type of, something with along those types of themes, I absolutely paint over my hardware. And when I'm painting those types of designs and themes as well, then I will paint with my drawers closed. And the reason is because I need to see how the whole thing is coming together. But if I were painting, say, a dresser or a buffet, and the whole thing was going to be pink, or the whole thing would be white or would be blue, then I would go ahead and take out all the drawers. I would paint the top, the sides, and the frame of the dresser or buffet, and then I would paint the drawers, let everything dry, put them back in. But in this situation, everything has to work together, and I really need the drawers in for, like, I need the whole piece as it is, to see how the design is coming along. And so what I will do, that does leave, like, where the excuse me, the drawer lips will cover some of the wood. And so when I'm all done, I will go in with a color that best matches the like color tones of that space, and I will pull the drawers out, and I will paint the area where the door and drawer like lids and lips like covered, so it's all cohesive. And I will also paint, the drawer, just that along all the edges of the drawers, and sometimes when necessary, we'll paint the interiors of the drawers. But to do a really artistic design, to me, is so much just, I have so much more success when I paint it all as one piece instead of each individual drawer, because I have to see how it all looks together. And I love painted hardware. I love it when hardware is a part of it. And sometimes you can go like that, carrying that vintage, like different layers of paint over through the hardware, because otherwise I think your hardware can look out of place, and I want it to blend in, but that's just my style. And so that may not be your style, and you may choose to remove your hardware and paint the whole piece, and then paint your hardware however you want, or just clean them and add them back to it. It's definitely just a matter of personal preference and style. So I am coming in with the red, and this red is called Heirloom Red. It is by Valspar. And once again, just as a reminder, I go into Lowe's, I order Krylon Chalky Finish paint, and I'll tell them which Valspar color that I want. And so that's how I do it. And this red, again, at this point, you will see a little bit later on that I'll find out something about my customer's space, which will make me take a slightly different direction. But where we are now in the process, my goal is to cover this in like some reds and blues and yellows and greens, and really just see where we're at. Where the customer had originally told me he wanted something very vibrant and Spanish style for his Spanish style home. I had sent him pictures of a few different hutches, and one of them had a lot of red in it, but it did also have blues and greens, and it's actually my previous Spanish style hutch that I did, and he loved that style and wanted me to run with something like that. And so I'm incorporating, while I added the Heirloom Red, now I want some lighter, more kind of a desert style blues, because I need that contrast, because The yellow was a very warm color. The red was a very warm color. So I want to come in and have a combination of the cool and the warm colors. And we will just watch for a little bit and see how this takes shape. And again, so I'm just using just a standard chip style brush when I'm doing this. And I'm placing my paint kind of, just strategically in areas where you will see some peeking through once we come over with a full top coat. If you look there at the 3 middle drawers and then the drawer above those, I love how those blues and the greens really play with the red and yellow peeking through. To me, that's very almost kind of an old world style look where something has been painted many times and over the years, and you see the previous colors coming through. And so here's what we have after adding some darker greens and this lighter, kind of a light turquoise teal type color. And I'm keeping in mind right now that the customer wanted something vibrant. And so I thought, you know what, I think for this top coat, I am going to have this really rich heirloom red be my top coat. And so you guys, to me, this is where it gets pretty exciting to have that red as the top coat, and then seeing all the yellows and the different tones of blues and the 2 or 3 different tones of greens coming through. This is something that I just ended up loving how it turned out. So let's watch how this plays out. And I will let you know, I'm not going for 100% coverage, more maybe like an 85% coverage, but leaving some of those beautiful tones below showing through. And while I'm putting on this red, I'm putting it on in thin coats. So I'm dipping my brush in the can, I'm offloading a lot of the paint, and then coming back to apply it. I have loved this red so much over these greens and yellows and blues, and the way that the greens and yellows and blues were kind of put on in that boho style, where it's not all green, not all yellow, not all blue, but it's a combination of those in different areas. I just love the red over those colors so much that I know that I will be recreating this type of look again in the future on different pieces. And I will say this too, I think that when I do this in the future, that I would, as a top coat, that I would put on a glossy lacquer finish, because that would really bring out the brilliance of the red. And some very antique pieces have a glossy lacquer finish, which I think is just can be beautiful on the right type of colors. So right here, what I have is liquid gold leafing. It comes in a really small jar. A little bit of gold leafing goes a long way. And so I actually get mine from Hobby Lobby, but you can order it through Amazon, and you'll find like it's a super small jar, like maybe the size, I don't remember how many ounces, but you'll find it's kind of the size of a, of a little jar of fingernail polish. It's not much bigger than that, but a little bit of that will do several, at least a few pieces of furniture for all of your detailing and accent. So here is what it looks like in the red. Now it does not have the back wall panel on the top. And so, but that red is just so pretty. Wasn't too sure about the yellow at the top, but when I sent it to my customer, he loved it. But he had said, oh, it needs more blues and greens because he has a saltillo floor, which is that Spanish, like kind of terracotta color, type of tile. And I did not know that, or I wouldn't have made red my top coat. So that was information on my part, is that I had failed to get a picture of his room, and normally I do that, but I didn't this time. And so he had asked for more blues and greens. So I am going over this piece with blue, and so most of the red is going to get covered with blue. But this is something that I want to point out. If you do, as you'll be able to see in a little bit, when you go over red with blue, you will get you'll almost like a purpley blue, because red and blue make purple. And while you're not mixing the colors together, you'll still have those undertones. So see how, while this is beautiful, it's still not a color that's going to look real well with the terracotta floors. But I had to cover the red with blue, and then I'm going to cover it with green, and then I go back over the green with blue. So you might think, why not just cover the red with green and then do blue? Because green over red gives it a brown undertone. So that's why I had to do these layers. So now that my blue coat has been added, I'm coming over the piece with greens, and I'm keeping in mind the terracotta color of his floors. At this point, the customer had sent me pictures of the space and had a really good idea what I was working with. When this custom order came in, I was actually on a trip for a few days to Fort Worth, Texas, and I didn't have the normal communication that I have with my customers for custom orders. And so this is why, this piece kind of ended up taking a spin. And so the greens that I'm using, I'm choosing some darker greens, like some real deep olive, kind of a muddy green. And I'm going to, as a base, to go over the blue, because I kind of want to drown out that purpley finish. And even though I'm doing that, I'm still leaving areas where some yellow can come through and a little bit of those reds and colors. But I want to have a more of a desert style blue green hues as my final result, which I think will go really well with the saltillo floors. I lightened up some of the darker green color by just dry brushing a little bit of the yellow over the green to bring out those some highlights in it. And so this also makes a natural and real pretty progression into the lighter tones of blue that I'm going to be adding later. Now this blue right here is the same dark blue that I had painted over the red, and you can tell that there's a different type of undertone. Like you're definitely no longer seeing excuse me, the purple undertone that you were seeing when it was red. And so while I did like the red, it wasn't going to work well with the customer's floors. And so the painting on the dark olive green, dry brushing a little yellow to add some dimension, and then we're doing a dark blue over it. And this blue, the color of it is Deep Space by Valspar. I can tell at this part of the makeover, as I'm looking at this, that the dark blue over the dark green, like while it is definitely getting more to the color scheme that the customer wants and it would go well with his floor, to me it also looks drab. So I am realizing like I am going to need to incorporate some lighter, brighter colors into this, this overall design in order for this to really have a fun and interesting and appealing boho Spanish type of style that would be attractive and pretty, and not something that would be really drab and heavy. And so I'm working on doing that by bringing in some lighter, brighter blues as contrast. I've added some copper. We'll be bringing in some lighter colors, some copper on the hardware. And so now we'll start to lighten things up, bring in some interest. And so I need some contrast, because you can tell like those blues and greens are real kind of dark and heavy at this point. So now we need to start adding some contrast. And so one of the ways that I'm doing that is this lighter blue. I'm going around the edges of drawers and really having some focal points. So if you want to do this type of boho Spanish style, you can take one accent color and choose. You may decide to go all the way around the door frame with it, or you may go in sides with it or in the middle, but you can really make this your primary accent color. And that's what this lighter blue is for me on this piece. You may have noticed that just a few seconds ago I offloaded some of the paint. I brushed some of it off onto my little cart that I'm sitting on, and that will help me to, like, I don't want like a glob of this light blue accent paint painted on. I just need a little bit kind of dry brushed on, and that gives you a lot of control over this style. So I think that's one of the most important techniques I can tell you about this style is offload a lot. Even after you've offloaded onto your can, brush a lot of it off onto another surface and then go and put it on you'll be able to put it on your piece. You'll be able to have a lot more control when you're dry brushing. I had mentioned it needing some lighter accent color, so while the lighter blue was my primary accent color, and it is my primary accent color, I had that terracotta color in mind. So I created a coral color, just kind of a desert coral, by mixing together a red and yellow and going a little heavier on the yellow than I did on the red. And that's how I came up with this color. And so I really loved the coral. I am playing around at the top with some colors and seeing what will look best as a top crest for this very multi-colorful piece. And here I am adding some final touches to the body. I'm really liking how it's coming out, and the coral colors, the lighter blue has just accented it really beautifully to me. I think the coral is a really pretty color that will complement the saltillo floors. And so here we have vibrancy of yellows and different tones of blues and corals and dark greens and a little bit of red accent. And it is just a very vibrant piece. Also has a very vintage aged look to it. Lots of interest of different colors, different tones of greens peeking through there. And to me, I just love it that it looks like a very aged piece. And so I'd sent pictures to the customer, and he was over the moon with the final results of this. So it's been a fun process to do. Thank you guys so much for coming along on this journey with me, and I hope you'll stay tuned for more tutorials in the future.